Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour of 2022. This is a slightly Batman villain's lair camera angle because I'm not anywhere near where we usually film. You've got the red teapot there in the background and the tile and bookcases, of course. But the echo is because I'm in the kitchen, where there are plenty of books. And don't judge, because I know you do the same thing. And we're continuing with this visual tour of my library for 2022, but I just finished up a week of doing the Library of the Lost, where I periodically stop from my physical library inventory in order to show you books that aren't in my collection anymore. And that involved sitting on the couch, showing you stuff on an iPad, which is pretty convenient and allowed me not to think about where this tour is going to go after this. And I still don't know. I'm still thinking about that. But in the meantime, I've got a stack of books on the floor here that I kind of want to move. I kind of don't want them on the floor here. And they're random assortment, as always. And I found that one of the side benefits of doing any kind of a library tour is that it forces you to deal with your books. So I'm hoping that that will work in this case. So we're just going to go through this stack for this installment. Starting with this is an omnibus edition of the Dragon Riders of Pern. Little glimpses of the great Michael Whelan cover art there for Dragonflight, Dragon Song, Dragon Quest, and the White Dragon. These are the first three of Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Rider books. She wrote a short story introducing people to the world of Pern and the Dragon Riders of Pern, and then made that into a novel called Dragonflight. In which a young woman who is despised, she's clearly thought of as nothing more than a scullery maid, turns out she has an amazing ability and aptitude for telepathically communicating with the dragons who protect the planet Pern from threadfall. I haven't gone through these books in any great detail, but it's a great premise, where because it's a fantasy world of flying dragons and medieval, warriors in armor. But it's got a science fiction premise. Pern is a planet in the Rookbat system that was colonized by humans a long, long time ago. And insufficient geological survey prevented those humans from knowing that a nearby astrophysics neighbor, a nearby solar system neighbor of Pern, periodically gets close enough to the planet so that spore-like life can migrate between the two worlds and fall as thread from the skies of Pern, and the thread destroys anything biological that it touches. And those early scientists were surprised by this and worked hard to come up with defenses for it, because by this point there was no thought in their mission of returning to the centers of galactic civilization. And we get the impression that the galactic centers of galactic civilization have long since forgotten them. So they had to come up with ways of their own, and one of those ways was genetically engineering lizard-like tiny dragon creatures of the planet to be both huge and to ingest a kind of phosphine that would allow them to burn thread out of the sky, so that they are genetically engineered fire-breathing dragons. And of course, the current inhabitants of Dune, the people in these cover photos or cover illustrations, don't know anything about that technology. They don't have any idea how it works. To them, it's just the natural order of the world. All of that the scientific knowledge has been lost. These first three books are terrific, absolutely terrific. I just love them. They have a few recurrent themes in them that the 21st century, the censorious 21st century might find problematic, but they're terrific storytelling. Then this next one, this is also an omnibus volume. This is a series that was put together by L.A. Graff, Michael Jan Freeman, and especially Diane Carey. Those Star Trek authors came up with the idea that maybe there is a place that's a little bit mystical that's called the Captain's Table. A tavern that's called the Captain's Table, and that's accessible only to captains. You have to have captained a vessel in order to be welcome in there. But the neat mystical twist is that the Captain's Table is always accessible to captains, no matter where they are. That you round a corner, no matter where you are, and suddenly you're there, and you're welcome, as long as you can pay your tab, which you pay with stories. And it's a great unifying narrative superstructure in order to unite all the captains in Star Trek mythos, and that was done in a series of novels. Several famous canonical on-screen Starfleet captains get their day in the sun to tell their story. And I read a lot of those novels as they were coming out, some of them more effective than others. And then this omnibus came out. I completely missed it when it first came out. I found it used. And this is it. It's the captain's table. There you have Captain Kirk and Captain Sulu, Captain Picard, Captain Sisko, Captain Janeway, and then on the back you have Captain Christopher Pike, and also Captain Calhoun, who was created by Peter David. Him and his bridge crew are created by Peter David there, so they're not canonical at all. They were created for Star Trek novels. And the person who had this anthology, it's all battered to hell. I've actually never seen another copy of this, but I wouldn't trade this copy for all the mud in Egypt, because the person who had this copy before me, not only did they not like the fact that a non-canonical captain was involved here, they disliked that so much that they cut out the Captain Calhoun story. They cut out the whole thing. They just excised it from the book because it's not real Star Trek. Not only that, but the person who had this before me, certifiably insane, went through and blacked out every single instance of taking the Lord's name in vain, every single off-color expression. So you'll be reading a story, and you'll just be going along just fine. Then all of a sudden, you will come across redactions. When I saw it, that the person had done both those things, both redacted the text for any kind of profanity and also removed a whole chapter that they don't like, I thought, that's what the rest of the world thinks of Star Trek fans just in general. This has to be the copy that I get, that I keep. So I love it. I just don't want it stacked on the floor, that's all. And I have to say, I think it's Diane Carey is my favorite Star Trek author, and I think she writes my favorite story in here. Yes, Fireship is by Diane Carey. It's a Captain Janeway story, and it's amazing. It really is genuinely amazing. I feel certain that whether you like Diane Carey or not, I feel certain that if you read your way through this thing, including the Captain Calhoun story, which you have to find elsewhere, I feel certain that you would come out of this thinking that's by far the best story. I loved it anyway. Then we have another anthology. This is the very best of the best. This is Gardner Dozois and a hardcover of selections from his selections for his big year-end year's best science fiction anthologies that he did for 35 years. And this has a lot of great stuff in it. There are a lot of great stories in here. The one that I love the most, I want to make sure that I can find it for you here. Yes, the one that I read right through this thing, and the one that I love the most is the very last story. It's called My English Name by R.S. Benedict, and it's incredible. It's an alien shapeshifter novel, story like you have never read before. I just loved it, absolutely loved it. But I loved a lot that was in here. This is an anthology, a science fiction anthology that's worth keeping. Then we have Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. This is the illustrated edition. These lovely illustrated editions. I think these are up to 2 volumes. I think there are 2 of these they're fairly well made, and they come with black and white spot illustrations, black and white illustrations and border decorations, and also a handful of full color illustrations that are pretty good. There's Kai Drogo, and also you've got full color maps with relief there. Just a beautiful thing. And I think the second volume, I think Storm of Swords is also in this edition that I just don't have. Really nice. They're really well put together. Okay, then we have, this is an indie publication, an indie historical novel. For a long time, I was the U.S. and worldwide editor for the Historical Novel Reviews indie branch. And so I got tons of historical novels in the mail, and this was one of them that I really, really liked. This is one of the only ones I kept. It's by Francis Hunter, and it's called The Fairest Portion of the Globe. And it's a Lewis and Clark, basically a Lewis and Clark novel that is just very, very long on great characterizations. Maybe at a little bit at the expense of the enormous, the panoramic detail that the Lewis and Clark expedition tends to bring out in its fictionalizers. I don't know if this is still in print. I love it. Absolutely loved it. Okay, then we have a great science fiction novel that has no science fiction in it. This is China Me Able, The City in the City. a weird, weird novel, a truly good thing. I know that this author is hugely revered for Perdido Street Station, but if anything, I think I like this even more. About two cities that have an uneasy coexistence in the exact same space, but it's not a physics type thing. It's not a vibrational plane. They occupy the same space. If you live in one city, you have to not see the other city. There are checkpoints. You can go to that checkpoint to cross over into the other city, but you're not going anywhere. It's hard to describe. There's a murder mystery. There's a body that's killed in one city and dumped in the other, and someone has to investigate that, and that in itself raises all sorts of logistical problems. It's an amazingly well done thing. This is the advanced copy from 2009. Don't have any idea what it looks like now. Okay, then we have a historical novel. This is Outlander. A lot of you will know this novel. Diana Gabaldon hit it big with this novel, a time travel romance novel. And this is the big trade paperback with the Starz TV series cover. They did this, and then they've gradually done the Starz TV cover for all the others in the series. And oddly enough, ordinarily, adaptation covers are notoriously hated by fans. I usually hate them too. But these were done with, really colorful and well-positioned high-definition publicity shots. They weren't done like covers usually are. These actually look good. So I have, I think, all of them. I'm due for a reread of Outlander. Then we have, let's see here. How are we doing for time? All right. Heaven and Earth by Paolo Giordano. This is a novel translated by Anne Milano Appel. That's what I thought. Who is the translator for M, Son of the Century by Antonio Scarlatti, it's a new historical novel that comes out next month. It's about the formative years of Benito Mussolini. She's a terrific translator. That is an almost supernatural job of translation that she does for that big book. But I remember being more impressed by the translation work in this book than I was by the book itself. So I guess that's not a new phenomenon for her. Then we have, this is, I guess you could call it gay fiction, The History of Living Forever by Jake Wolfe. This is a novel from 2019. The morning after the death of his first love, Conrad Airbinder receives a bequest. Sammy Tempari was Conrad's lover. He was his teacher. And it turns out he was not just a chemist, but an alchemist, dedicated to decoding the elixir of life. Sammy has left behind 20 years of notebooks that suggest he succeeded, but there are no instructions. Can Conrad track down the recipe in time to make sure he doesn't lose anyone else that he loves? It actually is a lot about aging, but it's a lot more about love. It's just, I thought it was really, really well done. Then we have a Heartwrenching novel. This is also, I think, from 2019. Are you going to tell me? Do we have a pub sheet for you? Yes, this is from 2019. This is by Stefan Merrill Block, and it is Oliver Loving. And it's about a boy who can't feel anything. Is he there or is he not? And does he know it? And is there any way to bring him back? Nearly 10 years after a horrific incident at a Texas high school, Oliver Loving lies wordless and paralyzed at a state care facility. The fate of his mind unclear. It's not all that unclear to the people who read this novel, but it's heartbreaking. Oh my God. Orbiting the still point of Oliver's hospital bed is the family transformed. Oliver's mother, Eve, who keeps desperate vigil. Oliver's brother, Charlie, who has fled for New York only to discover he cannot escape the gravity of his shattered family. Oliver's father, Jed, who tries to erase his memories with bourbon. And then there is Rebecca Sterling, Oliver's teenage love, who left Texas long ago and still refuses to speak about her own part in that tragic night. And that premise is tragic enough, but oh my God, the author plays with it, maneuvers pieces on that board towards the end, the ending, the climax here. You'd just be, your heart be in your throat the whole time. You wouldn't think that about a bedridden and maybe comatose patient, but oh my God, very, very effective stuff. Okay, then we have another thing that I have praised many times on this channel. This is a double. This is the Essential Dracula, edited by Leonard Woolf, which is Bram Stoker's novel with a huge amount of of annotation. Look at all the annotation on those pages. It just goes on forever. And there are many, many annotated Dracula editions, but Wolfe's annotations have to be read to be believed. They are so fun and snarky and complete, obsessive even. They are both a great annotation of the novel Dracula and also a great commentary on annotating the novel Dracula. It's just a delightful volume to have. If you're a Dracula fan, it's a volume you should have. Let's do a few more here. I guess this column was bigger than I thought. This next one is a battered old trade paperback of my favorite P.D. James novel, Original Sin, set in the publishing world, set in a small strife-ridden publishing house. I know what I want for this. This is just a battered old version of the American trade paperback, but I want the UK trade paperback of this. I've never seen it, but I know that I will. And that's the one that I want before I give this the reread that I'm itching to give it. Then we have, do I have a pub sheet in here? No, this is one of those James Patterson Presents novels where Patterson is, of course, he's an incredibly prolific thriller writer. He's also very generous with his time and with his platform and with his contacts. If he likes to cut your jib, if you're willing to write the same kind of nonsense that he is, then he might help you along. And he started a line specifically to do that with, who is this? Little Brown. And this is one of his by Derek Millman called Swipe Right for Murder. And it's very Patterson-esque. Very, very Patterson-esque. The young main character is gay. He wakes up with a dead body in his hotel room and proceeds to do just what James Patterson characters always do, which is nothing like what a normal person would do in those situations at all, at any point. So the whole novel, it becomes a chase novel, it becomes an adventure novel, and at every point in the novel you're thinking, well, okay, but why didn't you just, well, okay, that's fun reading, but why wouldn't you just and there are no answers to those questions with Derek Millman any more than there are been with James Patterson. You just have to go with the flow. Okay, then we have 3 of these Star Trek autobiographies. One for Spock, one for Janeway, and one for Captain Kirk, that have our author photos on the back. Kirk's quote is, "The great danger facing us is an irrational fear of the unknown. But there's no such thing as the unknown. Only the things temporarily hidden, temporarily not understood." And the quote on the back for Catherine Janeway is, "Set a course for home." And of course you can tell the quote that's on the back of Mr. Spock, "Live long and prosper." These are writers, it's all the same writer, right? Yes, Una McCormick. Just goes through all that is canonically known about these characters. She's given, I think, a little leeway to add on for the blank years that we don't know anything about. She's given a little leeway to do that, and she does. There are all sorts of... there's a photo inset for each one that are photo manipulated. There is a youthened version of Mark Leonard and Jane Wyatt as Sarek and Amanda of Vulcan. Of course, that there was no actual photograph of those two actors, didn't know each other at those ages, but you get all sorts of stuff like that. Very touching. You take a grade school picture of Leonard Nimoy and change it into a grade school picture of Spock. Very nice. And that happens in all of these books. My only problem with them is the aforementioned canonical, which is that the authors can't stray. The author can't stray at all from what's already canon. And that leads to a sameness where there shouldn't be, right? An autobiography written by Catherine Janeway shouldn't read anything like an autobiography written by Mr. Spock, and yet they read exactly the same. They have the same narrative tone. There's also one for Jean-Luc Picard, and I think one coming up for Benjamin Sisko. And they read the same. They read as if the same person wrote them, when that wouldn't be true. And I for a long, long time, I have wanted to write a fan fiction novel called I, Kirk. It wouldn't read anything like the autobiography of James Kirk, that's for sure. Then, just to speed this along, we'll do all the rest of these in one big block, because these are Big Book, the Big Book series. These things. Big Book of Pulps, the Big Book of Espionage, the Big Book of Locked Room Mysteries, and the first volume of Biblio Mysteries, all by Otto Penzler. The great editor Otto Penzler does these. They're big things, floppy with double columns. And they are meant to be celebrations. That's what they are. They are celebrations of what they're doing. Biblio Mysteries is the only hardcover in this mix, and it's all book and book world inspired murder mysteries. And I think there was a second volume of Biblio Mysteries, and these are terrific. They are just terrific to spend time with. I wish I had them all. I have quite a few of them, and there are a handful that I don't want, but the big books are great. I don't know that they're still made, but they are great, absolutely great. You may remember seeing the big book of classic fantasy, or the big book of modern fantasy on FFS, on some BookTube fantasy events. You might remember people waving that around. That was in this series, and there are lots of others that I have scattered throughout here. But for now, we're gonna stop with those so that I can figure out a way to get up from the floor. But that's our library tour continuing today, and we'll see what we do tomorrow. But I'm going to wrap this up for now and try to get some circulation back below the border. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.